If you want to take a walk this Good Friday, which will take you closer to the true meaning of the cross on that very first Good Friday, then this is the way to go.
They crucified people here long before Christ. This is where Spartacus and 6,000 of his followers met their deaths on crosses. And then, a century later, along this same stretch of road came Peter and Paul from Palestine, bringing the story of Jesus and his death on a cross.
This is the Via Appia, and like all roads, it leads to Rome, the crossroads of Christendom, and where the story of the cross unfolds.
We shall hear from students at Rome's English College and from their choir. It's a school where Catholic priests are trained. What does being a cross-bearer mean today? They tell us what it means to them.
The cross, the symbol that I see all over this great city of Rome, for me reminds me of the price that my friend, my brother, and my Lord paid for me. He hung upon that cross, stretched out his arms to embrace me, that once again I may know the joy of my relationship with God, our Father.
The ancient walls of Rome and the Porta Latina, one of the great gates. And above it, the first of many hundreds of crosses that decorate this city. But this is one of the earliest. An ancient monogram widely accepted by the early Christian community here. The Chi-Rho, the first two letters of Christos, the Greek for Christ. But look at what those early cross-bearers, the first Christians, were up against in bringing the cross to Rome. This was the heart of a powerful empire. They were rulers of the known world, and pagan. This was the forum, the political and commercial centre. Here the Senate met. Gods were worshipped. Temples were built to them. This road through the heart of ancient Rome may have been called the Via Sacra, the Holy Street, but it was not Christ they believed in. But there were Christians here, sowing the seeds. They did not know it, but Romans were already rubbing shoulders with them.
There was a large Jewish community in Rome with strong links to the homeland, and that's how the story of Jesus got here from Jerusalem.
But the missionaries who brought the story of Jesus into pagan Rome found that bearing the cross was not easy.
Pretty well anybody I've ever met has got something in their lives that is making them unhappy or makes them feel things are not as they should be. And if they have the opportunity to realise that God loves us so much that his own son suffered on the cross, it doesn't make it different, it doesn't make it better, but it can help them cope.
What is such an established and unshakable belief now must have felt so fragile when Peter first arrived in Rome. But look how it flourished. St. Peter's, the Vatican, the heart of Christian influence, standing now in what was the powerhouse of Imperial Rome. Like other cross-bearers, though, Peter paid the price. The scaffolding today is to spruce up his church for the millennium.
But nearly 2,000 years ago, on a spot not far from here, they were erecting scaffolding for Peter's crucifixion. Not considering himself worthy of a death like his master, St. Peter was crucified upside down. That was his Good Friday.
I think throughout our lives as future priests, taking up the cross will mean different things. Basically, it has to do with us accepting our limitations, being humble enough to accept the gift of salvation through Jesus. I think in order for the church to grow, we have to be very, very aware that it is God's church and not our church.
In a way that the early cross-bearers would never have thought possible, crosses today fill the sky above Rome while the old Roman Empire lies in ruins beneath them. What once seemed unassailable crumbled, and what was once so threatened triumphed. But bringing the cross to Rome was not easy. The ruling classes were not only powerful, they were pagan, worshipping their gods and their own wealth. And up here they built their palaces, on the Palatine, one of the 7 hills of Rome, the Beverly Hills of Rome.
Imagine the wealth that created this. They even had their own private racetrack and arena. It must have been like having a Wembley Stadium all of your own.
No wonder that anything seen as a threat, which Christianity would have been, was stamped on from a great height. Look at the courtyards, the gardens, the majesty of it all. You wouldn't want this undermined, would you, by someone who died on a cross? In this museum, amongst the elegant sculptures, is a crude graffiti. It was bequeathed to us by an ordinary lad, possibly a slave, called Alexamenos, who lived in the 2nd century. And it is remarkable. It is a figure hanging from a cross, an ass's head replacing the human one, and scribbled beneath it the words, Alexamenos, worshipping his god.
And they think kids did it. Young slaves who were friends of Alexamenos, who couldn't believe that anyone would worship a figure who died on a cross, because on a cross was how criminals died and not saviors. And so they made fun of the idea. And this was done in the 2nd century, making it the oldest depiction of Christ on the cross that anyone knows of.
It is difficult to imagine what life would have been like for an early Christian in Rome, but this remarkable church gives us some clues. It is San Clemente. Father Paul Lawler, an archaeologist and historian, is our guide, but this is not the part of San Clemente he wants us to see first.
By the early house.
Descend beneath the modern streets, and as if you're in a time machine, you are transported back into Christian history.
What does San Clemente tell us about the lives of the early Christians?
Well, we must remember that the early Christians, that is in the first 2 centuries, met in each other's houses. And then about the year 200, we have a fixed meeting place for Christians, the so-called Domus Ecclesia, where they met every Sunday for Sunday worship. Now, we have St. Jerome, who talks about the Church of San Clemente, already old, he says, in the year 384. So, if we look at San Clemente, we see that the Great Basilica wasn't built until about the year 400. So he must be referring to a 3rd century building that we've got here, which is a large hall. So this must be the only Domus Ecclesia that we can point to in Rome, the meeting place of the Christians back in the time of the persecutions.
The early Christians were mocked and made fun of, but when did that turn to persecution?
The actual persecutions begin, I think, with the Great Fire of 64, the fire of Nero, a great catastrophe. They looked for someone to blame, a scapegoat, if you like, and the Christians were the scapegoats. There was the immediate persecution. Large numbers were killed in the circus at the Vatican, and Peter and Paul were executed.
And to the early Christians, what exactly did the cross stand for?
The cross was rather like, what, the electric chair or the gallows for us today. Something terrible, something one preferred not to think about. But as a symbol, the actual symbol that we're so familiar with, it doesn't become common until the 4th century.
They have yet to find the hard evidence, but historians know that Christians died here in the Colosseum, the cruelest theatre ever built. It was commissioned by the Emperor Vespasian, whose idea of a good day out was to watch humans fighting for their lives.
And it was down here in the depths of it that the slaves and the convicts and the criminals waited to take part in what was the most violent show on earth. Because they weren't only expected to fight each other, they were going to fight lions and leopards and elephants. And it was to be a fight to the death. 60,000 people had come to see no less. There was only one hope, and that lay in one man's hands. All eyes would be on the emperor, for if he put his thumb up, he would be reprieved, but thumbs down, and the sentence was death.
The Roman historian Tacitus writes, Nero punished with every refinement of cruelty the notoriously depraved group who were popularly called Christians.
We don't know how many Christians died in the Colosseum, but this cross and memorial commemorates their cruel death and martyrdom. As a tribute to those early cross bearers, each Good Friday, the Pope comes here to pray.
The voice of the martyrs, according to Tertullian. Crucify us, torture us, put us to death, annihilate us. The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the new Christians.
The cross, for me, I think represents the most powerful symbol of God's love for us. St. Augustine says somewhere, looking at the cross, see the arms open wide to embrace you, the head stooped to kiss you. And I think, if God will suffer for us like that, will lay his heart bare like that, he must love us very much.
possible to get lost down here?
Oh, sure is, and I've often been lost here.
These are the catacombs outside Rome's city walls, the first Christian cemeteries, which give experts like Paul Lawler more clues to the growth of early Christianity in Rome.
Now, there's an example of the monogram, the Chi-Rho symbol, representing Christ's name. And also you've got Alpha and Omega. I am the beginning and the end, said Christ. This is a family vault. You can see it's cut from the tufa. You see the mark of the
It's quite
cutting.
a soft rock, isn't
it? Yes, easy to cut.
It feels crumbly in your fingers.
Yeah. And these are the locally, where the bodies were placed.
The bodies would just be slid in.
The catacombs are principally cemeteries. I think it's important to remember that. Originally, they were a series of independent vaults, each with their own entrance from above ground. The oldest vaults are pagan, no trace of Christianity. Then in the 2nd and 3rd century, we find that some of these vaults are Christian. At the end of the 3rd century, martyrs are buried, and so they become the centre of a great devotion.
What can we see here?
Now, this is the tomb of Veneranda. What's interesting is that in the background we also see Petronilla, who during the Middle Ages was considered to be the daughter of St. Peter. So Veneranda is asking for the intercession of St. Petronilla, who's indicating the scriptures as the way to salvation. It's in the catacombs that we find the oldest traces of the Christian faith here in Rome. We find tombs with paintings going back to the 2nd century, which show the faith of those people. And in a tomb such as this, we see Peter and Paul, the 2 apostles of Rome. And here in the centre, the Chi-Rho symbol. And then on the vault, Christ, the teacher, surrounded by his apostles. This is a 4th century painting, so Christ here looks like an emperor surrounded by his senators.
And what about the cross? At what stage did that become the symbol of glory?
Well, the cross becomes the great symbol of glory in the 4th century, when the church itself is recognised as and favoured by Constantine. The cross is the symbol of victory.
The future of the cross as a symbol of Christianity was sealed here on the Ponte Milvio, which crosses the river Tiber.
On his way to a decisive battle in the year 312, from this very bridge, the Emperor Constantine saw in the sky a flaming image of a cross with the words, "By this sign you shall conquer." And that was it. From that day, Christianity in Rome never looked back.
Constantine had a dream in which he was told to inscribe his banner with a cross. It was under this flag that he marched to victory. That was the breakthrough, and the cross became a protected symbol. Crucifixion was no longer used as a punishment. Christianity was placed under imperial protection, and the cross was honoured, becoming a symbol central to the Christian faith. So quickly did the cross assume power as the Christian symbol that in 325, Helena, Constantine's elderly mother, set off for the Holy Land in search of the real thing, the true cross, which, remarkably, she found in Jerusalem. These are the relics she brought back to Rome, and they're displayed here in Santa Croce, a church built on the site of her palace. Nails used in the crucifixion. Thorns from the crown of thorns. A piece of the inscription, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. And 3 pieces of the true cross embedded in a gold cross.
These relics may or may not be genuine. What matters is that pilgrims standing here may feel they are within inches of the actual crucifixion on that first Good Friday.
The price that I'll have to pay in taking up my cross is that I won't always be able to do what I want to do. The price has been paid ultimately by Christ already, and my life, my cross, is just to allow his work to be done and for me not to get in the way of that, to be a channel, if you like, for his love.
The cross in our lives today is something we'd rather ignore. We'd rather put away the pain, the suffering. We indulge ourselves in material things. We hope for the great joy and happiness that only the next world can offer us. If we are to truly attain that happiness, then we must take up our cross and endure the pains that our Lord suffered in this world.
Back in San Clemente, where we glimpsed the persecuted life of the early Christians, we now see the cross in all its glory, a victory on a scale they could not have imagined. A 12th century mosaic, the cross as the tree of life, spreading its roots not only through Rome, but embracing the world and symbolizing the victory over death on that first Good Friday.